Is this turned on? Welcome to Rick Bryan Real Time. We are brought to you by the Stream Grace Network and Oneness Ministries. About 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of going to Tulsa to hear my friend John Lynch. He was speaking on teaching grace. While we were there, I also had an opportunity to make a new friend. His name is Ricky Jones. He's the pastor of River Oaks Presbyterian Church in Tulsa. We became immediate friends. He's a man who understands living in grace. So I invited him to come do a video, and we talk about his church, his life. He's a great storyteller. And I think he's someone you should know. Ricky Jones, everybody. He's someone you should know.
Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, this is awesome. This is awesome. You just drove down from Tulsa, and I guess the roads were okay.
Oh, yeah. We didn't get a drop of snow.
Oh, you
never
didn't?
do. Yeah, I changed weather apps. I'm looking for something more honest. I'm convinced it's a big hoax. They just do whatever they have to get clicks.
Yeah, to get clicks. That's exactly. Well, then that's what we do.
There you go. That's fair. We're all looking for clicks.
We're looking for clicks. I've forgotten the verse. I think it's in Romans where we're no longer under the law.
No longer under law, but under grace.
We're under grace. And it seems weird to me that we have to teach that. That people, that being God's grace is like breathing. It now defines us, but we have to teach it. You told the story about who you were.
Okay, yeah.
And I'd like for my listeners and viewers to hear that story.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to share that.
Yep.
I do think it comes natural to be legalistic. It's not like this is a new thing. I mean, Paul wrote about it a lot in Romans and Galatians. And so it's obviously something that's been around for a long time. I was converted out of a very small church and
Tennessee?
In Tennessee, yeah,
Yes.
in West Tennessee. And they were good folks. I was very thankful, but I just didn't know anything, right? And I got to college, and I'm trying to remember exactly what I told, but I got to college and
I don't remember either. So.
Got introduced to a fuller faith and received assurance of salvation as I began to learn about grace. Mm-hmm. Up until that time, it was just one big war to earn to earn God's favor, and I learned. Once someone started to explain to me what grace is and the unconditionality of it, I just rested for the first time.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
What was the war? That's a very interesting description.
The war for me was I ever being good enough?
Okay. Yeah.
And I had this concept in my mind that I'd been taught that if you had, Christ was at the center of your life, then you'd see consistent victory over sin, and your dots would be in a row, and so I just kind of worked backwards. I was like, well, I'm not seeing the victory that I thought I was going to be promised, and my dots certainly aren't in a row. I'm in a mess. I'm just a complete mess, and so I guess I'm not a Christian though I thought I was, and so that just kind of became this big wrestling with the Lord that got worse and worse. I would feel guilty about everything. I spent a summer at a Christian camp, and then I felt guilty that I'd spent the whole summer doing ministry to wealthy people, and so then I spent the next summer doing ministry with poor people, and was terrible at it. I'm the world's worst inner city cross-cultural minister. Threw a basketball at a kid, just terrible. And then so I would fail, and then I'd feel shame about the failure, and I'd try harder, and I'd fail, and this shame failure spiral really just sucked all the joy out of Christianity for me. And that's when I learned grace, that I didn't do anything to make God start liking me. He started this relationship, and I didn't have the ability to end it. And that's when I received assurance of my salvation for the first time, really and had joy in it. And that lasted all of a year, maybe, a year and a half. And then I was still giving grace. I gave grace to myself for a very long time. But if you didn't teach grace the way I thought you ought to teach grace, then I had no grace for you. And if you didn't believe everything, you know, I struggled with some of these doctrines for months. And if somebody else didn't believe me after about 20 minutes, I would either give up on them or start yelling at them. And I didn't have much patience for them. And I'm exaggerating, of course. But then I went into seminary, and I just became somebody who had to get everything right. And I didn't have, I told you the story. I was a youth minister while I was in seminary, and the application of almost every sermon was, and that's why you have to keep the Sabbath. Because that's really what, that's what teenage boys and girls need more than anything else, is a good Sabbatarian rest every Sunday. But I was struggling with the law. I didn't understand my place in it. I didn't understand how it worked. And I became very angry. I became angry at the world, angry at people who didn't get it. I think I was very angry at myself for not being a better pastor. Very short-tempered.
Were you angry at God and just taking it out on everybody else?
I wasn't angry with him then. I was when I was struggling for assurance. I just had a very wrong view of it.
Okay.
And I thought that he was this austere, just an austere God who demanded perfection. And I became somebody who was pursuing it. You know, I wrote letters to the dean of my seminary to protest him letting students watch the Super Bowl in the Union, and it was like you can't really take it to the nth degree. I really wanted a tradition. My father and I now have never had a relationship, and I just didn't grow up with any kind of tradition. And so, for whatever reason, I really picked up on the Confederacy. If you're watching this, I repent of all this now. And that's not going to be the topic that we're talking about, but I just want you to get that out and get that out front, that I don't believe this anymore, and we'll be glad to help disabuse you if you do. But I was a huge Southern partisan. I was the chaplain of of the local chapter of the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
Nice.
I kept all my sermons. I didn't mean to, right? I just wanted people to be righteous. And so I would call them to repentance, and I would show them their sins that they didn't see. And one of my students, who the Lord did convert, and he's in the ministry today, one of my best friends, but he told me one day, he goes, you know, you're really good at making us feel bad. That's your strength. I'm just like, I don't think that's supposed to be my strength. So I don't know. I was just trying to figure out what wasn't working, why this gospel wasn't bringing my students freedom and joy, why they didn't really want to hear it. And I got angrier and angrier at a world that wasn't responding to my message. I didn't know my message was law. I only knew that looking back on it. I made a law out of the doctrines of grace, which is very odd, but it became...
we all did. We all did.
Yeah.
I'm doing a series called Separation Theology. And I love what you said, that I didn't mean to, because you were being honest to what you believed. You were being honest to a God that you knew at that time. I was taught by people in the same place, and I say this in that it would be easy to say I was lied to.
Yeah.
But
they're well-intentioned lies.
They were well-intentioned lies.
Yeah.
They thought they were teaching me the truth, that God's up there and I'm down here working my backside off trying to please a God who seems never to be pleased.
Right. And you know, because whatever you do, there's always something wrong with it.
Always
right?
something
Am I
wrong
doing
with
this for the right motives? Did I drive over to Edmond today to build up my own ego or to minister to your people? And the answer is both.
Both.
I don't worry about that anymore. I just laugh about it now. But then I would beat myself up over it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, yeah, to make a long story short, I'm sorry, I was
we got
answering
time.
your question.
Yep.
I got a hold of a sermon by Sinclair Ferguson called Christian Service, Is It Slavery or Sonship? And his hook line in that sermon was, you are to other people precisely what you think God has been to you. And I just started weeping and realizing that the God that I believed in wasn't the one of the Bible. I just couldn't believe that it would be that gracious. And that's when the walls came down for me. It took a long time to learn new practices, but that's when the walls kind of came down to grace.
And what have we done with grace? I mean, I hung out with people who are trying to make grace the law.
Yeah.
Or grace the destination. Or grace an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Which, it's none of that.
It's none of that. Yeah. Yeah, I think we take ourselves too seriously a lot of times.
Most of the time.
Yeah, and we kind of have this view of God like depending on us, and if we get things wrong, then he's kind of shaking his head like, almost like he's the football coach, who's, or the parent. We're responsible. We commit the same sin when we're parents. Like, our kids make us look bad.
Yeah.
Our team makes me look like a bad coach. When they fail out there, everybody's going to look at me. And we think that God's like that, kind of looking at us going, you're making me look bad. And I don't know, I've just learned, he just kind of laughs at us a lot. He's just so thankful we're trying, He's looking at you right now going, man, Rick, you think this little podcast is doing something? And that's so sweet of you. You're trying. Way to go. And he doesn't need us, but he lets us play on the team.
He doesn't need us, but he does let us play on the team. And he goes, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. Makes us believe we actually helped.
Yeah. So what's the first thing, when you read you read the book?
Listen to the sermon.
Listen to the sermon. What's the first thing you did after you discovered, I've been doing it wrong, this breaks my heart? What'd you do next?
I started asking people what they saw from me. That was a big part of
dangerous.
it. Well, I knew I was wrong. I knew I was in a bad spot. I just knew I was. I couldn't tell why. And one of the things that revealed that to me, I was standing at a urinal in a church in Memphis, and that's not where usually God speaks to you. He did to me, and a good friend of mine walked up next to me, and that one of the things that had been happening to me over this course of a year was that I kept getting turned down for jobs. And they were all in the ministry, and I thought that I was at a very small campus. I was at Delta State University, and to be honest, I kind of felt like I was better than that and ought to be at a bigger campus. And so started all these applications. I got turned down a lot, and the last one I got turned down for was Auburn. And it's a huge campus, and it's had the ministry I was a part of was called RUF. And their RUF had over 600 people in it at the time, and I was like, I'm suited for that. And so I was standing at the urinal, and a friend walked up, and he said, his name was Jean LaRue. He walked up, and he said, did you get that job at Auburn? And I said, no, they didn't even give me an interview. And he said, that's too bad. You'd be really good at that. And then he started to walk away, and he said, you're one of my best friends now, but when I first met you, you were terribly rude to me. I thought you were a real jerk. And one of the things that had crept into my personality was this confusion with being crass and being funny, or a confusion between being crass and being honest, And we know it now. I know it now. Whenever someone says I'm just honest, what they usually mean is I'm just very rude and have very low emotional intelligence.
Right.
And that's what I had. That was me.
Yeah.
And I went around getting mad about things and telling people I was mad about it, and it didn't help.
Just being honest.
Yeah, it's just being honest. I wasn't being mean.
So where did you?
I'm sorry. Where did I start? So I started with talking to friends.
Okay.
And I dove deep into Romans and Galatians and was looking at what I'd missed. And the more I just kind of studied, and really Ephesians 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just the depth, the Apostle Paul had to say, I'm praying that you'll be strong enough to comprehend the love of God. and just kind of realizing that you can't blow it up too much. And so the more overwhelmed I became by God's grace to me, the more gracious I became, I hope.
You know what's interesting about all of that? Having spent years of being angry and being judgmental, and God still uses it.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Isn't it funny that he still uses, I went to a legalistic church and God used it in my life. It's really difficult for me to figure out why are you still letting all this stuff being said that's so wrong? And he goes, well, why do you think you get to judge that?
Right. You get to decide. It's so funny. Like, the more grace you learn, the more angry you get at people who don't teach grace. And
Right.
like, I'm just like saying, God, why are you using these legalistic messages? And he goes, why are you being so legalistic about these legalistic churches? And
Guilty.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I have parents ask me if they think their kids are ready to, make a profession of faith, I'm like, sure, bring them on. And they always, to a person, will say, well, I don't think she really understands the gospel. And I always go, do you? The distance between me and this 4-year-old is like this, And the distance between me and the truth, it's enormous.
It's enormous.
Like, she's closer to me than I am to the truth. It's bigger than anybody can comprehend.
She's probably more faithful than you are.
Well, I don't go back into your legalistic stuff. You ain't gonna start complaining about how faithful I am. I refuse that condemnation.
I was just talking about the child.
She probably gets it clearer, though.
She's probably more faithful than I am. Let's leave it that way.
You're doing great.
That's the beauty, and I don't want to make this about John Lynch, but he's so
You
impactful.
can. He's great.
The beauty of John Lynch is that when you're in front of him, you're the only person on the planet.
Yeah.
And he just pours his love into me in that moment. That's the beauty of John Lynch. And I want to be like that. I want to love who I'm with.
Yeah. Like that song. If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with.
There you go. Exactly.
Sorry.
No, not at all. So, when did you land in Tulsa?
Well, it was not too long after that. So it's 2000, very end of 2005. There was a group in Tulsa that wanted, I'm Presbyterian, they wanted a Presbyterian church planted. And they couldn't find anybody who wanted to move to Tulsa. And I was in Mississippi looking to plant a church, and I tried to plant one in Chattanooga and Birmingham, and nobody wanted me to plant a church. And so, once again, the Lord used my inability to find a job to do something, and so
You had to go somewhere where nobody knew you.
right. Well, I had to go somewhere that nobody else wanted to go. They couldn't find a church planter who wanted to move there. I couldn't find anybody who wanted to hire me. We're a match made in heaven. And so, we had our first worship service in January of 2006, and have been meeting ever since. And it's really just I love it so much. I love our church.
Did you, and is that when you changed how you delivered your message, or what your message was?
I had changed quite dramatically. So I did change jobs eventually. I went from Delta State to Mississippi State, and that's where I really began to preach grace and listen to people. I think the only way you can do it is just to listen to it and receive it. People ask me sometimes, how do you preach a sermon that's grace-filled? And I always just tell them, don't preach the sermon you wrote on Monday. My Monday sermons are full of law and frustration, and I'm tired and in a bad mood. And then, Wednesday, and I'm beginning to get more gracious and starting to see that, wait a minute, I'm guilty of all the things that were making me mad on Monday. And then Thursday, I'm ready to receive some grace, and by Sunday, I'm ready to give it out. Wow, so that's just kind of how I learned to do ministry.
How did you meet John Lynch?
Oh, that's so funny. Well, you're talking about him focusing only on the person he's talking to, and that's very, very true. I got a story about that. Don't remind me to come back to it. Okay. So, some dear friends of ours, their son is an elder in our church, and they wanted me to meet him. And so they're supporters of his and on his board. And so, they twisted my arm and said, John's speaking on this cruise to the Caribbean. Could we, could we pay for you to come for a 7-day cruise? And I'm
Wow.
like, well, I don't usually take vacation in February, but I guess, it was just a wonderful time. I got to spend a
Was
lot
that
of
with
time with
Mercy
him.
Me?
It was with Mercy Me, yeah.
Yep.
Mercy Me at Sea. Isn't that a terrible name? But it's a great trip. You should definitely do it.
Oh gosh, I can't imagine. I
Yeah,
can't
so
imagine.
it was funny because I just felt so naturally at home with him right off the bat that I just knew we were fast friends. And first, he did the Two Roads talk, and it just really clicked with me that this is a different way of saying all the things that I've been trying to say and that I've believed. And one day he was walking around the fourth floor of the boat. You had a whole lap. You could walk around the boat. And he was doing some pretty serious counseling, it looked like. I don't know. But I walked up behind him and I goosed him. And I don't usually feel that comfortable with people, but for whatever reason I did with him. And we didn't even know each other that well. But yeah, so that's just kind of the persona he is. You just feel that.
Wait, are you going to finish that?
trusted.
What did he do? Do you...
He just jumped, but he never got out of the conversation, right? Like he's trying to do ministry. I'm this goofball walking around the boat with my wife going, I bet this will be funny. Let's do this. And so, so
That's why I like you.
I haven't even goosed you yet.
And I know, but I'm looking forward to it.
Sorry.
So,
Oh my gosh, rescue this conversation, Rick.
right.
Come back to something.
Most of my career as an artist.
Okay.
I was landscape painter, bird illustrator, and I did 30 years of that. I still get to do it, and gosh, I forgot where I was going with this, Ricky. Well, maybe it'll
That's
come
all right.
back.
It'll
Maybe
come back.
So, is the career you're in now, is this always what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think I preached my first sermon when I was about 4.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I've just always wanted to do it. I was never successfully able to stop believing in God. I tried a few times. One time I yelled at him and I said,
I've done that.
if you're not going to do what I want you to, I'm just going to stop believing in you. I don't believe in you anymore. And he goes, well, who are you talking to? And I said, I don't know. So that didn't work. But yeah, my brother was 10 years older than me, and he was converted at a Nicky Cruz revival. And part of that, it really was a real revival that went on in the early 70s in America, and a lot of people were surely converted during that movement. And he came home and taught me the gospel, and I wanted to be just like him. So I'm like, all right, let's do that. And I did. I preached my first sermon when I was 4.
Wow.
I still remember my teddy bear. He came to know Christ that day.
Did you baptize him? I remember what I was going to say. In my career, gosh, I was the star of my own show all the time, and I loved that. And then God said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to take you this direction. And he said, I'm not going to tell you what it is. We're just through with the art business.
Yeah.
You can still do your art, still paint, do this stuff, because you love that. But as a business, we're not going to do that anymore. And the fool that I...
Did that feel like a failure to you?
No.
It didn't?
No,
Interesting.
it didn't. I just didn't know what he wanted me to do. And I said, okay, you just tell me what you want me to do. And, we all pray this. You tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And he said, okay, I want you to trust me. No, you misunderstood what I was saying.
Yeah.
I want to do something.
Yeah.
Because I draw my feeling of success out of what I can accomplish.
Sure.
And he
Most
said,
men do, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, no, I want to be your identity. I want to be not an accomplishment, but I want you to define who you are by who I am. And I go,
So
I have
good.
no idea what you're talking about.
That's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah. I think we're created for that. I really do. I know we are. That's what the Bible teaches. But experientially, the first time I experienced it, I was lost. I got just as lost as a little boy can be. And my mom found me. I was in a parking lot after a basketball game, and I heard her voice yelling at me, and I turned around and ran to her, and she just embraced me in this bear hug. and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the way you can only enjoy a hug after you've been lost.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And there was no clearer place where I ended and she began. It was just that moment of physically feeling love and security and being cherished, and this kind of spiral of, she was so happy to have found me, and I was so happy that she found me. And she was seeing that I was being happy by her presence, and that made her happier. And I was seeing that she was happy by my presence, and that made me happy. And
Wow.
I just think moments like that, that's what we're for. And I think that's what God's describing in John 17. And Jesus is saying, I won't be happy until they're with us and happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're created for.
That chapter is what we named this ministry after.
Oh, yeah?
Oneness.
That's my favorite.
It's my favorite. God gave that to me 12 years ago, and I'm not a Bible scholar by any sense of the word, but he said, I want you to look at these verses, and I want you to read them, and I want you to try to understand the implication of what Jesus is praying for.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it just became my life verse, that he loves me with the same love he has for his son, because I am his son.
Yeah. Us and him and us, and no clear distinction of where we end and he begins, and that's our destiny.
That's our destiny and our identity. And so that's what we teach here.
Yeah.
That's how we counsel. Guys come in and say, I just can't get past these sins. I mean, you don't have a sin issue. You have an identity issue.
Yeah.
You just don't know who you are.
Yeah. That's so hard.
Sin is resolved.
Yeah.
Sin's resolved. We don't have to fight that battle, that war anymore, because they're all forgiven.
Yeah.
And now we just get to live in that
and
life of freedom.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Paul calls the law barren.
Yeah.
Because it can't produce anything, obviously.
Produce anything, yep.
And that's one of the ways I know if someone's living under law, if that statement, because the law can't forgive.
Right.
Like if you go through your life with regrets, well, that's a result of you not living, of you living under the law, because you believe you ruined something that can't be redeemed. But if you believe in grace and you know God makes beautiful things out of things as ugly as a crucifixion of a living man, if he can make the salvation of the world out of that, he's going to take your sins and all those things you messed up and do something with it beautiful. And that's living by faith.
Yeah.
And then you can rest. But man, that law part of us never fully falls away.
Totally, but it's so completely incompatible with the grace that God has provided for us.
So how do you fight it just week in, week out? Like your temptation to get your identity from your job, how do you struggle with that?
I fail at things. But you see, I don't believe in failure. I believe in opportunities.
Okay.
That when I try to do something out of my former identity, it doesn't work. There's no satisfaction.
Yeah.
When I just rest, if I'm doing a painting and I'm struggling and I'm got, you talk about a perfectionist. Oh my gosh.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Because I'm a realist, and so it has to be perfect. And if I don't achieve that perfection, I dive into depression. Because you're too stupid to figure this out. That is the reality that draws me back to that's the falsehood that draws me back to the reality of who I really am.
That's so good. That's so good.
So he loves dependence.
He does.
He loves
because
dependence.
that's what we're made for.
That's what we're made for.
That's what we're made for. That's why parental disapproval is such a burden to live under, and I try to teach people, I say, you're never going to change somebody else's opinion of you. And I know people who are still slaves of trying to change their father's opinion of them, and their father's been dead for 30 years. That opinion's not going to change. I say, you can't change what somebody thinks of you. You can change whose opinion you care about. God's got a great opinion of you. If you'll make that the most important voice in your head, that'll change everything. But
And you're right. That's a constant
it's always
struggle.
hard. Yeah.
It's a constant struggle. How do you deal with it?
There's a scene in Lord of the Rings in the book. It's really well described. I only read the book once. I'm not one of those.
I watched the movies.
I didn't understand the book until I watched the movie.
Right.
The first 5 minutes of the movie, I looked at my wife and went, "So that's what the rings are about?" I had no idea. I'd read all the books. So anyway, there's a scene in there where Sam, he gets the ring from Frodo. Frodo's kind of out of it, and the ring tempts everybody, right? And he gets this vision in his head of ruling the world with a sword of fire. And then he laughs at himself. He's like, "I'm a hobbit." And so I just laugh at myself a lot. Yeah, because what used to be this spiral, sin, shame spiral, I get out of it by laughing. So one of the big spirals for me is every sermon has to be perfect, like you and your art. Yeah. Every sermon has to be perfect.
What a slave driver.
Right? And, I used to think, well, maybe one of these days I'll outgrow wanting every one of them to be a home run. I haven't. I've done 1,000 sermons now, and they're not, every one of them had to be perfect, and none of them were. And I used to have this still do have this conversation with God. I'm just like, well, God, I want this sermon to be perfect. Sure, I want people to be converted and for you to be glorified. I really want to be famous. Like, I would love to be, the next John Lynch or whatever. And so I want that too. And then I just laugh. I'm just like, but, that's kind of silly. And clearly you don't need me, and I'm where you need me to be. And so, I don't know. Laughter saved me from a lot of things.
Laughter's a great thing. It's great. And I try to laugh. But I don't give lessons. I ran an art organization in Norman. I lived in Norman for 30-some years. And I ran an art organization, and they wanted to do a fundraiser, these wine and palette things.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, you can do the painting.
Is that like wine goggles? Like the more wine you drink, the better your painting looks?
Exactly
Is that what's going on? I just figured that out. Okay, now I know why they're so popular.
But I'm so intense
that
I suck all the fun out of people trying to do a painting. And I'm going, what are you doing?
That's ugly.
And they go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
because they're under the influence of wine and don't care anymore. But perfection is an amazing tool God uses to bring us back to His reality.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't allow us to use. I was in a discussion this morning, and as I thought about this discussion, I said, I'm going to ask Ricky about it. There are two things that I think is irrelevant. One is sin, and the other is hell.
Okay.
To me.
Okay.
Both of those are irrelevant to me because I'm no longer guilty.
Okay.
And I'm one with God, so that's where I will end up.
Sure.
So, is that true? Because the person I was talking to kind of believes that they're really close to this sort of universalism.
Sure.
That Jesus died for all and everything's going to be good for everybody. I don't know if I can't get there.
Well, Jesus certainly didn't seem to be there. I mean, he talked a lot about people being cast into outer darkness.
Yes.
And so I don't want to go further than Jesus. I'd like to sometimes, I think. Just kidding. He's right there where I need to be.
Yeah.
So
the statement is that, it's not relevant to me, but I think it's relevant to people who can't, because Jesus wants everybody to believe in Him, but not everybody will.
Right.
So what happens to those people?
Yeah. Are you asking me what happens to them, or whether the belief in hell is relevant, or both?
Both.
Okay. I think the belief in hell is very relevant, especially to people who are converts out of an unbelieving family.
Good point.
And I think the teaching on hell is one of the things that Satan has corrupted the most. I would venture a guess that 98% of what people believe about hell is not in the Bible. All we're told is that you're cast in outer darkness.
Yeah.
That's it.
That kind of separation's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the ideas of the eternal torture. I don't want to be one with a God who spent all of his time inventing a torture chamber. And he didn't. And that's not in the Bible. None of that's in the Bible. It was all made up by the Roman Church to try to get people to tithe more and to get people out of get people out of purgatory so they could raise more money and build their cathedrals. And I mean, that's just historic fact. And Dante wrote a ton about hell, but none of that's in the Bible. And I think that's important. I think it's important for people who have loved ones who never came to Christ. I just look at them. I can't promise them that they're in heaven. I don't think they are, but I can promise them they're still in God's hands.
Amen.
And they will not pay for a sin they didn't commit. They will not go one teardrop beyond justice. And you can trust him. Mm-hmm. You can trust him for what he's going to do. And and Paul says you will pay. You'll pay in your flesh for the sins you commit in your flesh. But again, there's a big spectrum of different people, and there are good people who don't believe in Jesus, and
sure.
At the very worst, they will pay a fair price for what they've done, and you can trust the Lord. And what he does after that's up to him.
It's up to him.
But I just think that's important. The doctrine of hell is important because it's made so many people distrustful of God. But I think even what we consider, well, I can't say that online. Never mind. I walk the very fine line of orthodoxy. I want to make that very clear.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
But I think orthodoxy is not nearly as evil as people have made God out to be and hell out to be. And so
I like that. I like that a lot.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll forget it, but
no, that's all right. You got it online. It's recorded.
It's recorded. I can go back and visit it.
I think sin's relevant in the sense that joy it's not the place where joy is to be found.
Right.
And, if you grew up like I did, it sounds like you did, you grow up kind of viewing God as this person who's put a barbed wire fence around everything that's fun. Mm-hmm. That sermon I talked about, Sinclair Ferguson describes taking a child to, FAO Schwartz and letting them run around, or Toys R Us for our generation, letting them run around and just ask, is there anything here you'd like? And, the kid just develops a speech impediment. He's so excited. He's like, yeah. Is there anything in this whole store you want? And the kid's like, yeah. And then he looks at him and says, you'll get none of it because you haven't been good enough. And he, turns to us and he says, you would never parent your child that way, but you think that's what God's done to you.
Yeah, I do.
And I think a false idea of sin leads us to still have those thoughts of not trusting God. Mm-hmm. So I think it's relevant. I don't live my life by it. I do and I don't. I don't worry about sin, but
it doesn't become
it's not my identity. It's not my focus. Yeah. Definitely not. But it is a good guardrail.
Yeah.
It's good to remind me that I need to ski on the slope and not through the woods.
Okay, I'll go with that.
I don't ski anywhere.
Do you ski?
I ski. I have skied about 5 or 6 times. I'm very clumsy. It's very hard for me to learn things like skiing. I have just terrible kind of balance issues. For whatever reason, I was naturally clumsy. So I finally learned to ski. All that to say, finally learned to ski. The last time I went, I got personalized instruction for a whole day. And I was like, I can ski. And so 3 days later, I'm skiing. It was at Purgatory. And I was skiing down the mountain. And I was like, I've got this. I'm not afraid of, I've got it. I can ski. And then almost immediately I said, I don't like this. I'm cold and I'm afraid that I'm going to fall. And so I'm never going to come skiing again. Up until then, I was always like, yeah, I'll go skiing because I don't know how to ski. And it seems like everybody else is having fun.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah. And then I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So do you ski?
No, I've never skied. I don't like the cold.
Yeah, well.
No, I've hiked in cold weather when I was younger, but not anymore.
I prefer a good hike.
Yeah.
I prefer a good beach. I prefer a good hike on a beach.
My favorite place to practice the irrelevancy of sin is on a golf course.
Oh, me too, actually.
Yeah, because my language becomes
colorful.
How's that?
We Presbyterians call that vein jangling. And I jangle vainly quite often.
Okay, I do too. Because I've tried for 20.
Well, you're still a perfectionist.
Oh,
So you're out there mad at yourself for not hitting the perfect shot instead of laughing at yourself.
I'm mad at myself a lot.
Yeah.
The perfect shot, you get one every once in a while, you hit a shot, and you go, I love this game.
Yeah, but you know, you hit a perfect drive, you know, split the fairway, and then you hit a terrible approach shot, and it makes you feel worse.
Yeah, it makes you feel worse. And then, or you'll be on in 2 and then 4 putts.
Right. Whenever that happens, I've got actually that opens up a whole other topic if you want to go there.
Sure.
But, so during COVID, I burned out what was left of my good hormones, I guess, and I really found myself in a very dark place. It's funny how often we'll justify ourselves or rationalize, and so people say, I'm quick to say, well, I didn't really consider suicide. I mean, I was walking around, everybody just took walks during COVID. What else could we do?
Sure.
And I was walking around listing reasons out loud why I would never commit suicide. So that's pretty close. Like, clearly I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
But to me, it was just funny. It's like I had to think about what I was thinking about. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking myself out of suicide. I got to get some help. And so I did. I went, I had a pastoral counselor who was just wonderful at the time. And one of the things he told me was, if you don't get some friends, you're going to die. Like, literally, I'm concerned for the longevity of your life if you don't get some just buddies. You need buddies. He's like, I'm not talking about, like an accountability partner that you every time you're with them, you got to spoil your guts.
Yeah.
Like, you need buddies. And I went home and told my wife that, and she said, please start playing golf again. And I went and joined a golf club the next week and convinced 3 of my friends to. We played twice a week.
That's
and
awesome.
We jangle vainly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And every time I hit a bad shot, which is every other one, they look at me. I want to get mad, and they'll say, you're not good enough to get mad.
I had this discussion with John Lynch about golf. He loves to play golf. And he said he'll go out and play, and he'll get about 7 to the whole 7th hole, and he says, well, I've been cussing and all that kind of stuff. And then they find out what he did. Have you heard this story?
Oh, no, go ahead.
But he said,
I've lived this story, but go ahead.
He said they find out that he's a pastor, and then they start apologizing, and he goes, no, I saw the shot. You should have cussed.
That's a good answer. I need to change that one. I've just gotten to where when people ask me what I do, I say I live off the wealth of my father. And then they don't really believe me, so I have to tell them I'm a pastor. But yeah, I've been avoiding that. That's a good one. I always need good responses to that.
Yeah. So, and we at that point you get the club special double.
There you go. And order a club special. There you go. That's right.
Yeah. Do the Presbyterians let you drink?
A lot. There's actually a drink called a Presbyterian.
Really?
Yeah. It's bourbon and ginger ale.
Wow.
So the Scottish have given us 3 great culture. I can say it if I'll try. Culture enriching inventions. They invented golf.
Yeah.
They invented Scotch whiskey.
Yes.
And Presbyterianism. All 3. Probably on the same day. I mean, I think, so you can trust us.
Yeah. So
there used to be there's a fairly common saying that every time you find 4 Presbyterians together, there'll be a 5th.
Well, I used to be a Baptist, and they said, you know why you take 3 Baptists fishing? They won't drink in front of the other 2.
Right, that's right. If you only take one, he'll drink all your beer.
Oh gosh. Okay, we're doing this so that you can have your identity in Christ. That's my vision.
There you go. Me too.
Yep.
Me too. And
gosh, what a great
time. Take Jesus seriously, but not myself.
I would like for you to tell the story.
Okay.
About the Christmas gift.
That's my favorite story.
It was such a great story.
Thanks. Yeah, that's my favorite illustration of grace, and really grace in the ministry, because we are perfectionists, right?
Well, yeah.
We're trying so hard, and we're not happy with our final product.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's hard for us to believe the Lord is happy with it. And I think back, whenever I get caught up in that spiral, I think back to, it was Christmas my 4th grade year, and my brothers, I had two brothers. One was 7 years older than me. He's with the Lord now. And then I have another one who's 10 years older than me. And so they were, old enough to like be buying real gifts. Like they had jobs, they were out of high school, and they were giving Mom like things that were actually valuable, right? And I was still drawing. And so one year I just decided I want to get Mom a real gift. I want to get her something like an adult gift. I don't want to give her a drawing anymore because I couldn't draw. They weren't good. I knew they weren't good. And so she kind of figured out a little bit of what was happening. And you want to hear about that?
What?
My mom passed away in 2018.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And when we were going through the stuff was just awful because, she didn't throw anything away. Anything I touched was sacred. And we actually found a box. And on top of the box, she wrote, "Nothing in here is valuable. Sorry.
That's all right.
Don't waste your time going through it." I just couldn't throw it away. And over it was all the pictures.
That's awesome.
So, full disclosure, I'm in a weight loss protocol right now. My doctor told me I had to lose weight.
Oh.
And so I have stopped taking Lexapro. So I asked my wife, I said, "You'd rather have me all weepy and skinny and alive, or fat and happy and probably about to die?" And so she chose me weepy and alive. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. I apologize on so good TV.
That causes us to connect.
Well, here we are. So I wanted to give my mom a real present. I was pouting around the house. I don't use words that well one-to-one, but I exude a spirit. I can make a flower wilt if I want to. And so she figured out something was wrong. She said, "What's wrong?" And I mumbled something about not having money for Christmas presents. And she's pretty savvy. So she told me, there's a tree that fell down in our front yard. If you want to go, carry those branches to the road, I'll pay you for it. Now, that was my job. But for whatever reason, she paid me for it this time. A big $10 bill. I'll never forget it. I was so proud of that $10 bill. So this is 1977, y'all. And then so that, I asked her if we could go shopping for Christmas presents, and I'd never asked her to go shopping before. So she's like, "Sure." We drove to the Kmart's. And when we got there, she just happened to mention, they were selling necklaces for $9. And she goes, "I really would love one of those necklaces." So I ran back and I bought her one. And put that $10 bill on the counter, and got the change and the necklace, and I put it in the present in the bag, and I tried to hide it from her. And I kept it over, by the car seat the whole ride home. And we got home, and I ran into my bedroom, and I had a box that had stuffed animals or something, and I dumped it out, and I had this box like this big, and for a necklace, and I put the necklace in it, and I tried to wrap it, and man, I couldn't do it. I went through half a roll of paper, it felt like, but I just could not get enough paper to make it look pretty. And so I got a magic marker, and I wrote, "Ricky can't rap," on the top of it. That's 100% true story.
Yeah.
And she kept that box a long time too. But so I came and I put it in her lap, and I said, "Will you wrap this and not look at what's in it?" And she said sure, and she wrapped it. I went and put it under the tree. So proud of it. And then, Christmas Eve came, and that's when we exchanged gifts, and my brothers were giving her her gifts. And I just proudly walked over to the tree and picked up the gift that she had paid for, that she had driven me to the store to get, that she had picked out, and that she had wrapped. And she unwrapped it and pulled that necklace out, and she just smiled, and she said, "Thank you so much."
Oh, geez.
And that's ministry. That is ministry, man. I mean, we just do what the Lord lets us do, the breath that He gives us, and the gospel that He shows us. And He's looking forward to that day, saying, "Thank you so much."
And He's driving us to the giving
Yeah,
us the money.
everything is it's all him.
It's all him.
100% him,
All him.
and still, you know, Jesus says that not one drop of water you give to a child will go without its reward. Like he's going to reward everything, and we're like, why? Like it was all because of you that I did it, and he's like, but you did it.
Yeah.
And he's just so happy.
And I like to think that he's the reward.
He is, definitely.
I like to think that the reward is not a thing but a person, and he's the reward.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, you know, you can't look at the sun because our eyes are too weak.
Yep.
And if our eyes are stronger, we'd be able to look at it. And I like to think of it as every little gift, every little thing we do makes us a little stronger. So we'll be able to stand looking into his face even more.
Wow.
And,
That's awesome.
and his brightness won't, you know, overwhelm us. We'll just be able to see his beauty even better. So that's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. This has been awesome.
It's been fun. It's been really good.
Fun. I want to do it again.
All right.
Maybe I'll come to you and bring all this stuff. We'll set it up and do it there.
Seems like it's easier for me to drive over here, but
Well,
whatever you want to. I want to get on with the women though. I think that'll be more fun.
Well, we'll make that happen too. It'll be a lot more intelligent.
Oh, well, then never mind. I don't go down that route. I used to really want to be smart, and this is easier.
Yeah.
You know the old line from Harvey. My mother told me, son, you either need to be really, really smart or really, really pleasant. And I tried to be smart, and it was too hard.
It's too hard. That's from Harvey.
That's from Harvey. That's
That's
the final line of Harvey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for watching us. I hope you weren't expecting to get some theological secret revealed to you, because this is Rick Fry in real time. And that in itself tells you that it's not even real time, it's recorded.
I was about to say, you know this isn't real time.
But it's fun.
But it's
We
been
have
real.
fun.
It's been real.
It's been real.